Hello, everybody. You probably have heard that we suffered avalanche of corona measurements, instruments, policies right now, and that the entire continent is aflame. There are mass protests everywhere, and vaccine mandates are already introduced in Italy, in Austria, and now, of course, also the German government is contemplating it. The tone towards the unvaccinated has become extremely harsh and is utterly unacceptable. It's now outright bullying, I would say. The upcoming Chancellor Olaf Scholz has already announced that he is going to support a mandate. So people are forced to get vaccinated in Germany too. We see already huge disruptions in Italy. Italy had a huge protest in the ports, which also helped disrupt the supply chains. You see in France that caretakers are leaving the hospitals because they are mandated by law to get vaccinated. A similar law has already been passed here in Germany, so we don't even have to wait for that. It's going to come soon, and you can already expect that people will drop the ball and they will just stop doing whatever they do. They stop cooperating with the government as much as they can. I see a disintegration of our nations as a whole. And this is already sensed by autocrats like Vladimir Putin, who is amassing his troops, in fact, at the border of Ukraine. And this is a sign that all autocrats all around the world, including the Chinese, they feel emboldened over our inability to come together as nations anymore. We are losing our unity, and with that we are losing our security. With that we are losing our autarky. We lose basically anything we ever worked on, and this is not a small deal. Now, why is this done? And I believe that a lot of this bullying is for the sake of itself, but also, I mean, obviously the vaccines are a business. Now, there is a new variant coming up, the Omicron variant, and as you've probably have already heard, it seems to be extremely mild. So we may be very lucky, and this new variant, Omicron, may be actually a vaccine itself. It may be the exact presentation of the spike protein and all of the other features of the virus that your immune system needs to be prepared for any other modification of that same virus. It may also be taken as a sign that Omicron is just another step of the virus becoming ever more harmless. We saw already that Delta actually did cause much less damage per patient than the Alpha variant that came out of Wuhan originally. And it seems like there's this trajectory. And this is actually quite normal among viruses if the viruses are not super mutant. So there are some viruses like HIV and like flu where the trajectory of the evolution goes anywhere. But for most viruses, and even that overall trend is true for HIV. For most viruses, they adapt to the host because it's more beneficial for its spread if the host lives longer. There are exceptions to that overall rule that viruses become less harmful over time. And I'm linking up an article in Nature in the description box, so you can check it out for yourself. But the exceptions really are explainable through certain characteristics that are not present here with the coronavirus. One example is the rabbit pest control virus RHDV, which was spread around Australia because rabbits are a plague in Australia, and the Australians had a pest control infection of rabbits, so to reduce their numbers. And the reason was because the carcasses attracted flies that spread the virus to other rabbits. So the dying of the host actually helped the virus spread. Now, this is very unlikely to happen in human beings. If human beings die, we usually take precautions to not get in touch with the corpses. So the exceptions that there are are usually explainable in one way or another, but as a general rule, viruses in human beings tend to become milder, and Omicron seems to be already very mild. So it might be that we are already paving our way out of this crisis. And the vaccine, even though it's very unlikely to be a match for the Omicron new variant at all, the vaccine must be sold. And I think this is a big issue why they are bullying so hard. It just must be sold. It's ever less effective, but they are sitting on it. They have bought it. States have bought it. On the other hand, we are still dealing with the Delta variant, which is still a deadly one. And we have to address the concerns. I like you to make the overall civic argument, and it's very important. The thing is, we don't actually share much anymore with our fellow citizens. They even don't see themselves as citizens. This is a big argument here in Germany. Are we a people or are we just a population? There's a huge debate. I'm not kidding about between are we a people, a citizenship, or are we a population, just some random people in a place? Okay, so even that basic, the most basic social contract that we used to have, like democracy, is now very, it's very thin. So, I want you to make the argument that the state should not intrude your bloodstream, but also, and please do that in order to rebuild kind of the social fabric that we've lost. Yes, continue to make that argument, but also in recognition that people obviously don't listen to this anymore, and you want to reach out to people who are frightened of their lives. So I want to address the arguments that unvaccinated people are a danger to other people. So you can have, a conversation with somebody else outside your friend zone and can make the argument accordingly. So the argument of the Arnold Schwarzenegger, I don't care about your freedom corner, is usually that remaining unvaccinated has huge externalities. And to be honest, I wanted to make the civic argument, but if we were not talking about COVID, but about the Black Death, something that's a real big issue, we all would make an exception, right? If it were a short-term exception to something that would wipe us out completely, nobody would make the civic argument. Everything has exceptions, and I'm not a fundamentalist, I'm not a fanatic, even in the things that I believe most strongly in. But these people are exaggerating. They are exaggerating problems, externalities of the unvaccinated, like they also exaggerate racism, sexism, homophobia, etc. These people like exaggeration, and it's always difficult to challenge exaggeration instead of does exist or does not exist. The 0-1 arguments would be much, much easier. But unfortunately, this is not countering their arguments, but because they usually pick up something that does exist and then inflate the meaning, inflate the problem. So yes, unvaccinated people do spread the virus because human beings, right? What is true is that people who are unvaccinated have a higher viral load than people who have breakthrough infections of the vaccination. And I've looked into an Israeli study a little bit, not in too much detail, but I wanted to check out the overall distance, the difference between those who are vaccinated and those who are unvaccinated in terms of the viral load, which is just a rule of thumb measure, not actually a proven connection, but a rule of thumb idea for a larger spread coming from unvaccinated people. And so this study was looking into the PCR cycles. How many cycles do you need, the replication cycles, until you can detect three genes, which is RP, the gene N, and the gene E. And here you see the overall table of results, and it seems that the mean or the average cycles they need to identify that virus is for, let's say, the gene RT-RP is 31.2 cycles they need right after a vaccine or shortly after that, when they assume that the immunity is the best. They also write that after 6 months it's basically the same, and so after 6 months you see what it basically is for the unvaccinated people, which is somewhat 26.7 cycles. It doesn't seem a big difference to me. I'm not a specialist, but it doesn't seem a big difference to me whether you have 26.7 cycles or 31 cycles, 31.2 cycles in the mean to identify a given gene. Likewise, the numbers for the gene N, it would be 29.5 to 25.2, the decline or the difference. In the gene E, it would be 26.9 to 22.8. So, there are some more cycles you obviously need when people are vaccinated or shortly after they are vaccinated. But I don't see how the difference is big. And the authors of the study also write that they are actually unsure how that parlays in overall real life settings, how that is actually affecting the infectiousness of the given individuals. It's just an indication that vaccines do a little bit to reduce the spread, but I personally don't want to have this entire harassment that we see right now for the reduction of a threshold cycle from 26.9 cycles to 22.8 cycles. Another argument related to it is that the high viral load in vaccinated people is shorter than in not vaccinated people. In this argument, it's not the amount of viruses that you may cough over some other person, but it is how long you are passing it on, how many people you may meet until your immune system takes care of the virus. And the argument falls short because once you are diagnosed as having COVID, you usually retire yourself from society, you go home, you call in sick, and it doesn't matter how long you have a high viral load once you are at home. It doesn't matter anymore. It's absolutely irrelevant. Related to that, it doesn't matter how likely you are to get sick in the first place. By the way, once you had it, your immunity is better prepared against future infections than only after having a vaccine, right? Once you have it, once you identify, to go home. So you're not a danger to other people, and things really only have a legitimacy to be politicized once you have some externalities, once somebody else but the person that comes to decide is affected. If nobody else is affected, it should not be the job of the state to do anything. The state is to get out of your life. It's probably the most catchy argument the pro-vaccine mandate side will come up with is that the hospitals are overchallenged. We had quite some challenging weeks past us here in Germany where the ICU units were trading the patients, which is not a good thing to happen. We also saw that in the previous month, people relied too strongly on the effectiveness of the vaccine, which fell flat. And so we have actually less staff at our disposal. So we have less beds and less nurses and less staff, medical staff, to actually amend the influx of patients. Now, this is bad planning. And this is the reason why we had a lot of trouble. Now, as I'm recording, this can change, of course, every day, but it seems like the steep rise in infection seems to decline again. So maybe we may be out of this soon again. We also had a very bad weather, cold weather that is bad for the immune system, so that may be a part of it. And it might be that the weather stabilizes and therefore the immune system of the population may also stabilize at the same time, and therefore the overall situation, the medical situation in the hospitals may ease again. This is a little hope. The numbers suggest that the overall infection curve is in decline. I've actually made a lot of more notes about all these restrictions and so on that we are facing right now. But I think the vaccine mandate is the most important one, and I wanted to give you arguments against it outside of the civic argument, which is very important, really. So you can kind of fight your fight. And I hope to see you soon. Bye.